Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. So they're going into the AY program.
I'm not sure. I'm presenting. I don't know.
All right, thank you so much. You may be seated. Now for Elder Brown.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Elder Terence Brown from Charity Seventh-day Adventist Church, and welcome to everybody online, everybody in the sanctuary. Just want to thank you. This is an important message we're going to have here, and I want to introduce our pastor before we get started, so everyone knows who we are. We have Pastor Robert Madden, who's the pastor of our church. He's going to say a couple of words, and then we'll get into the forum. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Brown. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. It's good to have you all. Both those who are in the sanctuary and those who are online, those who are on the Zoom, we want to welcome you to the event this evening. Promises to be an excellent event, and I think it's something we all need information about. So I want to thank those who've come to share with us, to open our eyes, open our mind, give us a clearer understanding of things that are happening round about us. We know we have young people, we have adults too. From what I'm understanding, it's not only young people who can be involved in sex trafficking. So we just want to thank those of you who put this program together, Brother Brown, Sister Malcolm, and others, and those who have come to present. Thank you so much for your willingness to come and to share. And for those of us who are wanting to get information, thank you for coming by this evening. And we just know that it's going to be a good evening. And we pray that God will watch over us as we move forward. All right?
All right, thank you, Pastor. I just wanted to read a scripture. I'm coming out of 3 John chapter 1, and it's going to be verses 2 through 4. It says, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your souls prosper. For I rejoiced greatly when brethren came and testified on the truth that's in you, just as you walk in truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth." And so in Ministry of Health from Ellen G. White, it says, "The Savior in his miracles reveals the power that is continually working at man in behalf to sustain and to heal him. Sickness, suffering, and death are the work of the agnostic power. Satan is destroyer, God is the restorer. The desire of God is for every human being is expressed in his words. Beloved, I wish above all things that you may prosper, be in health, and even as your soul prospers." So this forum is to help not only learn about sex trafficking, but also teach us to have some preventive measures put in so that people can prosper, and that if people are hurt, we can provide them places where they can find healing. And the healing is not just in therapy, it's not just in services, it's also in spiritual. And that's where our part comes in as church. We have a duty to work in conjunction with these people that I'm going to introduce you to help those who have been hurt to find a place of healing. So our first presenter will be Ramona. She's from a place called 146. She's not here, but she's going to be online presenting over Zoom. Our second presenter will be Lisa, Officer Lisa. She's of the East Hartford Police Department. If you'd like to take a stand here. Actually, you can move up here to this chair here. And she will be sharing her experience. She has a lot of experience. She worked with the Bureau. She's worked with human trafficking on all different areas. So she's going to share some knowledge with us. And then we have Brother Cephas from the Youth Services, and have him come over here. And he's going to let us know what kind of services that we have to help prevent, and also if something happens, where you can go to get help. And then finally, we have our own sister, Pam Ferguson. We know she has her, she's a master's in social work. She works in different areas with children. And she also has a program at church called Parents Supporting Parents. So now we're going to open up the floor to our first presenter, which is going to be Ramona from Love 146. And now after she presents, because she's online, she's actually on vacation, she's filling in for someone. We're going to allow questions and answers with her. But then after that, the other three presenters will present, and then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. Amen? All right, so we're going to follow that form. So can we go to, is Lisa on, Brother Hamilton? I mean, Romana?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
The floor is hers.
Can everybody hear me? Can you guys give me a thumbs up
There
if
she
you can?
goes. Okay.
Hi. Beautiful. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. Thank you for the lovely introduction, and thank you for everybody who is participating on this forum. It is amazingly important that we all know about human trafficking, and that we know that the truths versus the myths that are out there. So I really appreciate you guys hosting this, bringing education into your community. And like Terence said, I'm Ramona McIntyre. I work at Love 146. I am the development specialist there. Love 146 is an anti-trafficking organization. We work primarily with children, and we work with children internationally as well as here in Connecticut. And so I'm going to start my slide presentation. One second. And then I'll share with you what Love 146 does, as well as some history and facts around child trafficking. Okay. Perfect. So yeah, like I said, we are Love 146. The slogan that you see at the bottom, that is our vision. So it's, oh, I don't know what happened. Okay, so sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. So what you see at the bottom, ending child trafficking and exploitation, nothing less. That is our vision for the organization. So we'll start with some general info, history, and the values that we have here at Love 146. So as I mentioned, let's see, there we go. Love 146, we're an international human rights organization, and we're working primarily with children to end child trafficking and exploitation. And we also care for survivors. We serve children in the United States, the Philippines, and the United Kingdoms. And we had previously worked with children in Africa and several countries in Africa. However, because of COVID, that has slowed down significantly in the past, I would say year, but hopefully we're hoping to pick that back up. Our ultimate goal, like we said in our vision, is to end child trafficking all together. Rob Morris, our co-founder and CEO, tells a story that maybe you've heard of a village that's by the side of a river. And one time they found a dead body that's floating from up the river. So it's going down to their village, and they take the body, they bury it, they do a ceremonial burial for it. And then next week, another body floats down. And this continues to happen over several months. And eventually they ask the question, we can't just be taking care of the bodies and burying them. We have to stop. We have to know what is up the river that's causing these bodies to come down. And so that is our approach, is we have to stop trafficking where it happens. And we take that in prevention education. And in a little bit, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So child trafficking is one of the darkest stories on the planet, but we're really hoping that with the work that we do, with survivor care and prevention education programs that we have, we're able to stop it altogether. So, and we also have a new program called Employment and Education, where we're hoping that children who have been trafficked here in the United States, specifically here in Connecticut, are able to, once they leave our program, are able to go on and have work experience or finish school. So our story, Love 146, a lot of people, one of the biggest questions that we get is, why the 146? So in this slide, you're seeing a girl with a red dress. Our co-founder and CEO, Rob Morris, before he started the organization about 20 years ago, was invited to do a raid at a brothel in Southeast Asia. Now, he doesn't recommend that anybody does this. He didn't have a great experience with it. It was very traumatic for him, and he believes, it was also very traumatic for the children. And it should 100% be left to professionals, law enforcement, and people who are very trained to be so careful with children that are in that situation. But nonetheless, this was a while ago. He was invited and he went along. And when he got there, he had to pretend to be a trafficker. And what he saw was a two-way mirror. And on the other side of the mirror, there were children in red dresses who were watching cartoons, waiting to be exploited. And if that doesn't conjure up an image that makes your stomach hurt, I don't know what does. And he says all the children had kind of a blank sort of expression on their faces. They were kind of dazed looking at the TV, with the exception of one girl and her number, because they had pinned numbers to the children to take away their identity. That's something that groomers and traffickers do. They had pinned a number on her, and it was 146. And after the raid, we don't know what happened to that girl. We hope and pray that she is safe, that she found a safe place to go to, and that she is being cared for, and that she is now, 20 years later, is a grown adult and has a loving home and a loving family. We don't know, but every single day that our staff at Love 146 works, we work for her. And so that's why we have our name, Love 146. And so we are effective at what we do because we specialize in what we do. Like I said earlier in my presentation, we specifically focus on trafficking and anti-trafficking work with children. Our survivor care is specialized for children, as is our prevention education work. And like the slide says, you wouldn't go to an eye doctor to get knee surgery. And so we are specializing in trauma-informed care for children who have been trafficked. So here it is in a little bit of a nutshell. Our vision is to end child trafficking and exploitation. We focus specifically on children. We work both locally and globally, which is something that you don't really find in many nonprofit organizations. Either a nonprofit works very locally or they work globally. And this has been a benefit for us because each program is able to influence the other programs. And so I say that we're trauma informed in our prevention education because globally we have amazing programs for survivor care. So in the Philippines, we have 2 homes, the round home and the white home. The white home is for boys, the round home is for girls. And currently they're at capacity, unfortunately. And age ranges in those homes are anywhere from 2 to 18 years. In the Philippines, in the round home and the white home, everything we do, or the children have everything that they need in those 2 homes. Education, doctor's visits. We have a farm. They have a beehive that they take care of. They have friends. Anything that the kids need, they are provided for in the round home and the white home. That's not the case here in Connecticut, but we'll talk about that in just a second. And we were founded in 2002. So this year we are starting to celebrate our 20th year anniversary, which is very exciting for us. So here we go. Here's our impact. In survivor care, we've currently reached 622 children. And that's not globally, that's here in the United States and the United Kingdom. There's been a little bit more if you add up the children in the Philippines. Prevention education has reached over 60,000 children by our work, and strategic collaboration has reached over 8,000 people. And that's professional caregivers, community members, parents, anybody who deals with children or who has to work directly with children or in the education system. That's who we've reached. So we were founded in 2002. You could see Rob Morris standing in giving a presentation there. There's one of the photos of one of our homes, and we partnered with 25 organizations throughout Southeast Asia in order to make the white home and the round home happen. We then trained survivor care workers so that they can have specialized trauma-informed care for the children that they are working with. And that's because trafficking in children there's a very specific trauma, and there's a very specific way to care for those children. Our ultimate goal in any child that we work with, whether they're 2 or 17 when they come into our care, is that we make this very devastating moment in their life be just that, be just a moment, and that they can then grow up and continue to live fulfilled lives. That's always our goal. So like I said, we helped build 2 safe homes in Thailand and Cambodia, and we funded research projects that focused on transgender youth and boys addressing their vulnerability, because transgender LGBTQ youth are very vulnerable to trafficking and exploitation. And boys are as well. I don't want to say they're a minority, because really we don't know what percentage of boys are trafficked, because it's such a taboo subject to be talking about boys. We always hear about the girl in the white van who was kidnapped and taken, but we never hear about boys who were abused and trafficked and exploited, but it does happen. And so we needed to make sure that our survivor care workers were informed on the specific trauma that it causes to boys, as well as transgender youth. So here I'll talk about our programs a little bit more in depth. We have our you heard about our Philippine Survivor Care. Our United States Survivor Care, that's primarily, not primarily, that's only here in Connecticut. We do hope to one day expand. We don't know when that's going to happen. Currently, we have 10 social workers. Each social worker has no more than 5 children that they work with. And at the moment, we're at capacity. And so there's a wait list to get into our program. So we're at 50 children in Connecticut that we're working with who have been trafficked. They come into our program, be it because a parent has called or because we're connected with the Department for Children and Family. Once we get a call, our social worker will connect with the family and the child. They carry a rapid response backpack, and in that backpack, they have different things that they would need: a blanket, coloring books, condoms, information on where to find help, as well as a teddy bear. And that's always their favorite part, is the teddy bear. And so the social worker goes, does a rapid response assessment, says yes or no, I think this child needs to be in our care. And once that child is in our care, the social worker will do anything and everything under the sun to help that child. A lot of our children are in foster care. A lot of our children are living at home with their parents. And so we get a mix of both. Children who are in foster care, unfortunately, sometimes run away. Sometimes we have to wait a couple weeks to be able to find them again. But our social workers are on it, and they are the go-to for that child. Their relationship becomes very close, and our social worker will advocate for them in court, will help parents if the child is living at home, will help parents find deeper therapy, will help parents find, I know one of our social workers, one of my coworkers, said that she helped a mother get food stamps. The mom didn't know what to do, and that's a vulnerability. So our social worker helped her get food stamps. Another things our social workers do is to make sure that children who are in school are not close to their trafficker. In a later slide, I'll show you, but sometimes traffickers can be your peers, including people who are in school with you. So that's our United States Survivor Care. Program lasts 18 months. Our motto for that is we never close a case. And so once somebody has gone through our program and they call and they say, hey, I need help, or more likely is a foster parent or a parent will call and say, hey, this child needs help again, they can come right back in. We will take them, no questions asked. Currently, as I alluded to earlier, we just established a education and employment program, and it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite programs just because I think it really helps with our values. It shows Love 146's values, that we're taking this very dark moment in a child's life and helping them come away and helping them move forward. So the employment and education program, after the children have gone through the 18 months, they will go in, if they'd like, and most of them do, they will go into the employment and education. And Marlena King is our director of employment education. She's fantastic. The first thing she does is give them an assessment. And she does this because she wants to prove to the kids in the program that they are strong, that they are leaders, that they are smart. Because so many children, because of their history, because of their upbringing and their vulnerabilities, don't know how amazingly capable they are. And so Marlena starts with that, with the assessment, telling them, hey, you're fantastic. These are all the things that are available to you. And once she shows them everything that's available, whether it's finishing high school, registering for college, applying for a job, she is there along with her staff to help them, to walk alongside them step by step, and help them attain those goals. So last year, we had 3 they're not children, they're adults now, but 3 adults go through our education and employment program who graduated high school, which is fantastic. And they're now in college. We help them prep for interviews. We help them write resumes. And we also speak to their employer and advocate for them in their employment situation. We had one of our youth was employed at a department store, and their boss came and spoke behind them. And this was very triggering for that person, for that youth. And they left the store in kind of a panic. And thankfully, they called us, they called their social worker, and our employment and education staff was able to speak on their behalf to their employer and sort of give a training on how to work with children and people who have been trafficked. So that's our employment and education work. In addition to this, we have a 3-year strategic plan where we're going to start working on a 2-generational approach. And the purpose of that, again, is to end child trafficking altogether. There's a much higher risk for children to be trafficked if their parents have been trafficked. And so we want to work with the children and with the adults at that point who have been trafficked, who have gone through our survivor care in the United States, work with them and train them and give them resources and be there a resource for them on how to parent. If they need food stamps, if they need help finding babysitting, if they need, new parents we need a lot of help. And that is our goal, is to be able to provide that help for new parents in order to minimize the chances of their children to be victimized. Next is our prevention education. It's the United States Prevention Education, and that's available nationwide. Currently, we are in 23 states, which means that 23 states in their school systems have implemented our Not a Number curriculum. And Not a Number is a 5-week course taught by a staff member at the school. So it's been a coach, or it's taught in health class in middle school and high school. It's also taught in juvenile detention facilities, and it can be taught anywhere where there are children learning and there is an adult that is teaching. And what we do is we train the trainers. We call that TOT. And so we are able to teach this curriculum to teachers, and then they go and then they teach it. So it's just like a part of their yearly education or yearly health education. For 5 weeks, they go through the Not a Number program. A lot of children, it resonates with a lot of kids. I was privy to one class, and one child almost, she came out and she said, I have a friend that this is happening to. And so there are from time to time, some kids do disclose that they think that they're trafficked, or they think that maybe their friend has been trafficked, which is good to know, because now we know that the children are aware of what trafficking looks like and what grooming looks like. And are able to speak to an adult. And one of the things that the facilitators always say, or the teachers always say, is who is your safe adult? So we want to make sure that children have a safe adult that they can go to, whether it's a parent or not, or a teacher or a friend's parent, somebody that they feel that they can go to, who is not going to yell at them, who is going to be understanding, and who is going to be able to help them. So they get these skills under their belt in order to be able to know what trafficking is and to know what to do about it if they're faced with it. And that's our plan for stopping child trafficking altogether. And so far, as you saw the previous slide, we've reached over 60,000 children in the United States with our prevention education work. And we're currently getting an evaluation done. And so we're going to see just how effective our curriculum is in actually preventing trafficking. So stay tuned. We think it's going to be great. The last program I want to talk to you about is our United Kingdom Survivor Care Program. So in the United Kingdom, we don't work with children who've been sex trafficked. It's primarily children who are taken into the UK and they are trafficked for labor. And so what we do there is we take them in. We have a foster parent system where they're taken into a safe environment, into a safe home, and they're taught job skills. They're giving opportunities for employment that is legal, employment that is fair, that they're going to gain a fair wage. And then, hold on. There we go. So our values, like I said before, one of our values is making sure that the children go back and just really take back their childhood. But the first one is we collaborate. We know that we don't have all the answers when it comes to child trafficking and exploitation. And so what we do is we partner with other organizations. We want to be as effective as possible. And so we don't really want to reinvent the wheel or try to spin our heads. We are a nonprofit. We have a small staff and a small budget. And so in order for us, we collaborate with other organizations who are doing great work. And we believe we are stronger together and we can help and be more impactful to children if we work together. We listen. We welcome diverse perspectives. Our staff is a diverse staff. The children that we work with are diverse, and we pride ourselves in being forever learners. And so we listen to what the children are saying that are in our care. We listen to what the specialists that we work with are saying. Listen to our staff. We listen to people we collaborate, so that we're always upgrading, always tweaking, always reworking our programs so that they are the absolute best that they can be, so we can provide the absolute best that we can for the children that we serve. We hope, this is what I mentioned, we hope that children grow up to be the best they can be, and they are not focusing on one of the ugliest things that has happened to them, but rather that they step up and that they are able to continue living and have long and successful, happy lives. We are thoughtful. This I can tell you is very true from experience. One question our staff always asks itself, whether it's in my department, in development, in survivor care, in finance, in HR, is how is this going to impact the children that we serve? There is never a time that we want to do something where it might have negative consequences on the kids. And so we are thoughtful in our social media. We are very careful in what we post and what we say. We are very careful with our language. Recently, we stopped using the words slavery and abolition because we learned that the kids don't think of themselves as slaves. And we're not abolitionists. It's not what we do. It's not who we are. It's not how the children see themselves. And so we just stopped using those words. We innovate. Like I said, this is a good example of our employment and education program and our 2-generational approach. We are always thinking of the youth that we serve. How can we best serve them? And we want to come up with good solutions and have those solutions evolve and be transformative to the kids that we serve. We persevere. Our CEO says we have defiant hope, which I absolutely love. We don't give up. If you remember from earlier in the slide, I said that we don't close a case. And that's because we know that everybody has a potential. They have the chance. They have an opportunity, and we want to be there for them. We want to be there for their victories, for their triumphs, for their ups and their downs. And we know that kids are going to have a downside. We know that there's going to be victories because they're human and we struggle as humans, but we want to persevere with them and we want to be with them every step of the way. So our approach to our survivor care is we provide a safe space. We believe freedom from trafficking and exploitation isn't an event, but it's a journey. So it takes a very long time. And so we journey with our survivors over the long haul, and our commitment goes beyond their childhood. We prioritize healthy integration into the community so that they are less likely to go back into the life after they've had the 18 months with us. We offer holistic survivor care, addressing biological needs, social, financial, and spiritual impacts of the violence. And like I said previously, we collaborate with existing local resources in order to make sure that our children get everything that they need. Like I said, we don't know everything. And so we are forever learners, and we constantly want to be reaching out to folks who know more than us. And we strive to see survivors become self-sufficient adults, free from re-victimization. And this is, again, where we say we never close a case. When a child or an adult wants to come back and say, hey, I'm having a hard time, we welcome them back and we give them the help and the resources that they need in order to go on and be exactly what it says, to become self-sufficient adults. So our approach to prevention education, it moves beyond traditional awareness. In that sense, it's more of really teaching what a vulnerability looks like and teaching what a groomer looks like. Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions around that. We consider all genders. And that includes they, them, gender neutral folks, boys and girls. And like I said, so many programs focus on girls and women. And we also want to include boys in that fold. We have a research-based approach that is currently getting evaluated to see what exactly the impact has been. We don't just put things together. We are very thoughtful. As you saw, that was one of our values. And the program is designed for schools, and it is designed and it's always being updated so that the language is current, so that the children really resonate with what they're hearing. I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old daughter. And so I learn a lot of the slang that they're using, and that's exactly what we do as well for our prevention education work. And so last but not least, we integrate a holistic view by focusing on the strengths and the personal and the societal pressures that create or increase vulnerabilities. So more about child trafficking and the actual problem. Excuse me. So the definition of child trafficking is, okay, sorry about that. The child trafficking is defined, or human trafficking is defined as any commercial sex act or labor induced by force, fraud, or coercion. For labor or commercial sexual exploitation to be trafficking, it has to have force, fraud, and coercion. So force is physical restraint, beatings, rape, confinement, or fraud, false promises, posing as a false agency or other service jobs, or lying about working conditions and wage. That last one, lying about working conditions and wage, is more about labor trafficking than sex trafficking. For coercion, it's threats or blackmail, confiscation of passports or identifying documents, and making a person afraid to seek help. However, if a child is being commercially sexually exploited, force, fraud, and coercion do not need to be proven, because being a child is the vulnerability. So there's two different types of exploitation. Well, there's several types of exploitation. Two of the biggest that we all probably heard of are sexual exploitation, and labor exploitation. Labor exploitation includes sweatshop work, restaurant work, cannabis factories, drug dealings. Other forced labors include forced begging, pickpocketing, organ harvesting, being a drug mule. And here we have ritual sacrifice as well, and organ harvesting. So as you'll see from the chart, 48% of trafficked victims are labor trafficking. The next biggest part is the sexual exploitation. And then we have a part that is unknown, and domestic servitude. So the unknown part is really important to know, that a lot of these percentages that we're seeing, they come from the ILO, and it's not exactly a guess, but it's not a pinpoint 100% correct number, because trafficking, especially child trafficking, often goes misrepresented. There are some states that are safe haven states, which are great. That just means that if a child is arrested for prostitution and they say, oh, well, this person is 16 years old, they cannot be a prostitute, because fraud, and coercion, they're obviously being trafficked. And so they are given help instead of being prosecuted. In some states, that is not the case. In some states, if a 16-year-old is arrested for prostitution, they go to jail for prostitution. I think I skipped a slide. Sorry, my computer is having a little bit of issues. There we go. So in 2017, the International Labor Organization, which is the ILO that I referenced in the slide before, estimated that 24.9 people are being trafficked and exploited at any given moment. 78% of that is estimated to be labor trafficking, and 22% is estimated to be sexual trafficking. Of that number, 5.4 million children, 5.4 million are children. So how do children get trafficked? That is one of the questions that I hear all the time. And there's this myth or this idea that we have that trafficking does not happen in the United States. Trafficking does not happen in my town. Trafficking happens far away in developing countries. Those are all myths about trafficking. Trafficking happens everywhere. We only need people to have trafficking happen. And they do happen here in the United States, and they does happen in Connecticut. In our survivor care program, we currently have children from every county in Connecticut. So it does happen. Groomers are very skilled. And so what a groomer is, it's somebody who spots a child's vulnerabilities and exploits them. So some of the vulnerabilities are if a child has previously been sexually abused, if they've had a mental illness or have, if a family member is using illegal substances, if they have an incarcerated member of their household, if parents are separated or divorced, if they've been physically neglected, if they've lived with domestic violence, or if they were physically abused. Other vulnerabilities include poverty, war or disaster, marginalization, so being a minority, and like I said previously, simply being a child, just your brain is developing, and just being a child is a vulnerability, and traffickers are able to spot that real quick. So traffickers are calculated. They know, like I said, they know how to spot a child that has vulnerabilities. This is a victim of child trafficking that said this quote: "I'd like to get my best girls from another state and bring them back where they know no one, and I was their only friend and focus." And that's one of the things that they do. They separate their victims from the group, not necessarily kidnapping. There's a big difference between kidnapping and trafficking. Kidnapping is a crime against a state line. Trafficking is a crime against a person. But a trafficker will isolate their victims and become a victim's world, everything, the center of their being. And once they have this relationship, then the trafficker will say, hey, you know how you love me so much, why don't you try to do this? Or there is an example of a couple who is here in the United States, and they were taking in runaway foster children. This was kind of unknown. They were in a big city, and this house was known to take in foster kids who had run away, and you could stay there and be safe and have food and be warm. And however, after a couple of months, this couple would say, you know, you've been here for 3 months and it's costing me so much more money to pay for electricity, to pay for food. I'm really running out of cash. Do you think you can help me buy XYZ? And so this couple who was in the facade helping children, not at all helping children. They were actually trafficking all the children that went into their homes. So most often children are trafficked through that vulnerability. If they're poor, a trafficker can say, you know, I know how you can make some extra cash, XYZ, after, of course, they become friends with the children. My mom's addicted to drugs and we're out of money. And a trafficker could say, well, we're going to visit some nice men who are going to help us. And in this situation, or in this example, it's the mother who is trafficking a child, and that absolutely does happen. If a child has been sexually abused, a trafficker could say, for example, you don't have to do that for free. You're more valuable than that. Come with me, I'll show you. My mom got a new boyfriend, he kicked me out. And this happens a lot with LGBTQ children. And then a trafficker can say, I have a place for you to stay. You don't have to talk to him. You can be free. Come with me. If there's a war, my parents were killed by rebels, there's no one to protect me, a trafficker will say, I can protect you. Come work with me. Come be entertainment for our soldiers. And here's an LGBTQ example where it says, I told my parents I'm gay. I'm not welcome there anymore. And the trafficker will say, we've been there. We know exactly what you're going through. Let me show you how to make some extra cash so you can pay for an apartment. And then the last example I have is a child that she says, I want to be a model, but my parents say I have to finish school. But, you know, I don't know what to do. And then a trafficker would say, oh my gosh, but you're so pretty. I can help you with that. And there you go. And like I've said, traffickers are calculated. They know how to pick out their victims. A pimp looks for that weakness, then uses those weaknesses to his advantage, to their advantage. They begin to see you as their champion, even if the weakness you rescue them from is being the one they created. So this slide, it always hits home for me. So who can be a trafficker? A trafficker can be anybody. At Love 146, we have had children tell us that their trafficker was a romantic partner, a family member, a friend, a gang, member of clergy, a teacher. And as you will see in this slide, every single person here is a real trafficker. They were arrested and they were punished for being traffickers. And you could see that it's not what we have in our minds, right? It's not the typical bad guy that we have in our mind of someone who's a trafficker. These people look like somebody you could trust. And that's exactly what their goal is. So how does a trafficker gain trust? It's through recruitment and grooming. They put in time, they pay really close attention, they shower children with gifts and compliments and provide something that is possibly missing: money, love, attention. Anything that the child is missing, a trafficker will have it tenfold. And so once they've gained the trust, it moves to exploitation. And so they engage in physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, psychological, and emotionally breaking the child so that he or she becomes completely dependent. And then there's trauma bonding, where a person has dysfunctional attachment to their exploiter. And traffickers control children by confiscating their identity documents. They threaten to report them to police. They isolate them socially. They potentially could lock them up. They tell them that they owe them money, or the trafficker controls all the money, and they threaten family. So power and control in labor sex trafficking, there's a lot of it. It's coercion and threats. It's intimidation, intimidating by harming them, family, property. It's economic abuse. And so that's what we said in that last slide, was like the child or the victim will always owe the trafficker money. Denying, blaming, and minimizing. So the trafficker will say, no, that's not what we're doing, or place blame on the victim and say, well, you're the one that wanted to do it. I'm the one that's helping you. They use their privilege, and so they treat their victim as a servant, regardless of gender and age or nationality. They keep them isolated so that the trafficker is the end all and be all for that victim. There is physical abuse, there is sexual abuse, and there's emotional abuse. So what are some potential red flags of trafficking? They suddenly become detached. So the isolation, they're excessively controlled or monitored by someone who claims to be looking out for them. They're unable to give answers about their schedules, work locations, conditions, appears to possibly work and live in the same building or location. That's a good sign of trafficking. They have excessive security measures in their home or their work. So like so many cameras, constantly being with somebody, can't leave the side of a certain person. There's a notable change in their dress. Sometimes if a child can't get a job, isn't the legal age to get a job yet, however, they have nicer clothes, nicer jewelry, that's a big red flag. If they show signs of physical abuse, such as bruises, cuts, burns, or sexual abuse, such as being submissive, malnourished, or jumping jittery. If they feel fearful, or they seem anxious or depressed. If they have substance problems all of a sudden. If they have several hotel key cards, that's a big red flag as well. Or wads of cash, that's a big red flag. If the child suddenly has an older boyfriend, or a tattoo or a marking that they're very reluctant to explain. This is a quote for one of our survivors that we worked with. It says, "I've heard of pimps and I know to be scared of them, but I didn't realize that the person I thought was protecting me was actually my pimp." And that again it's the grooming process where you think this person cares for me, this person loves me and is taking care of me, because that's what they've been programmed to think. So now that you've learned a little bit about what Love 146 does, what trafficking and grooming looks like, you say, this is horrible, what can I do? This is the number one thing you can do, is you can start with learning. So again, thank you so much for hosting this forum and this panel. It is fantastic. The more we learn, the more we can recognize trafficking and the more that we can do to stop it and prevent it. You can give monthly to organizations that work on anti-trafficking work, such as Love 146, whether it's $5 or $50 a month. It's incredibly helpful for us to have those donations. It helps us plan for our future, and it helps us sustain our programs such as survivor care and our prevention education work. One very fun thing that's coming up is our campaign. It's called Tread on Trafficking. It's a wellness campaign that starts in June and it goes for 30 days. And you ask your community, your network to sponsor you, and you choose your wellness activity, and you do that for 30 days and you raise funds for Love 146. So this year we're doing it in June. We did it last year and we had a team of kids that did it in the Round Home. And one of the survivors who was there, he was 3 last year. He watered his plants for 30 days. And it was fantastic. They sent us photos of him watering his plants. It was the sweetest thing you've ever seen. Excuse me. Be safe online. If you're a parent and you have a child, learn to snoop, or keep them safe, or place some sort of safeguards for your children in order for them to avoid certain websites. For example, my kids, even though they hate it, they're not allowed to get new apps unless I know what the apps are. And that's a safety measure on the iPhone. And so if they try to download an app, it blocks them from doing so unless I give permission. I have to follow all their social media accounts. And that can be tricky because, of course, you can just make another social media account and mom doesn't need to know about it. But this is where you provide your children with information on how to stay safe. Don't talk to people you don't know on the internet. Don't accept friend requests from people you don't know. Only accept requests and only communicate with people on the internet who you have seen face to face. You can volunteer. We have great volunteer groups. Unfortunately, they've gone a little dormant since COVID, but our volunteers do so much for us. Anywhere from writing thank you notes to, that's our administrative help. They help us write thank you notes. They fill the rapid response backpacks. They host house parties to help fundraise. They host all sorts of different fundraisers. And they teach the community. They go out to businesses, they go out to hotels, and they raise awareness on trafficking. Other ways to donate is online shopping or online giving. So through Facebook, you can plan a fundraiser, and through Amazon Smile, if you choose Love 146, a percentage of your shopping comes back to us as a donation. Again, be a prepared parent. This goes back to what I said earlier, from online safety to knowing red flags, and have frequent conversations with your kids. I'm here to tell you, I know firsthand, it is not the easiest thing to do, especially when your kids are like, oh my goodness, mom, you've said this before. But it's incredibly important to keep saying it and keep being aware, and just know who your children are talking to, know what's on their phone, know what they look on, what they check out online. And this is a quote from a child that was reached by our Not a Number curriculum. And she said, I managed to get away. I made an excuse and got out of there as fast as I could because of what we've talked about at Not a Number. I paid closer attention and knew to trust my gut. Everything happens for a reason, you know? Maybe that's why I came to this class, so I could be safe. And that is all for my presentation. I'll stop sharing. And I can take any questions if anybody has questions.
Thank you, Ramona. It's very informational. The floor is now open for questions. Anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? Sister Trish, over there. State your name so people.
I know it's a big subject and there's a lot to process. But you guys have my number and my email, and I am always available if you want to send me an email with questions or anything like that. I would be very happy to connect.
Yeah, wait, we have someone with a question for you. 1 second.
Okay, great.
Okay, so the question is,
Mhm.
how do parents prevent or be on alert for trafficking amongst their teen? That's part one. And then part two is, at what age will it be, not inappropriate, I would say, but at what age will it be not recommended to search your child's phone? Because my daughter, she's 15, and I have one 15, one 18. I don't look at the 18-year-old's phone anymore.
Sure.
She's over there. But the 15-year-old, I haven't done it since she turned 15. I'm wondering if I really need to start again. I've kind of just maybe gotten tired of the fighting and the fussing, and I'm a horrible mom and blah, blah, blah.
No.
But should I get back into it again? Like, she has what you call, what is that thing called where you get the money? What is it called? Cash App. And I wanted to see her Cash App account to see where the money is coming. Am I right to want to do these things? Or she's at an age, she's going to be 16 next 2 months. Am I okay to be starting this back up again? Or what do you think?
Personally, I always tell my children, so I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and my 15-year-old is almost 16. So our daughters are very close in age. And what I say to them is, I pay for their phone monthly. They have no reasonable expectation of privacy. That's me personally. Now, like you, I don't go and check their phones all the time. There'll be times when months have gone by and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, I haven't checked the phone. And I do feel like a horrible parent, but you're not a horrible parent. I'm not a horrible parent. It's life. We're busy. I think the biggest thing you should do is just talk to your child, or both of them, even if your older daughter is 18, talk to them, let them know that there are not always great things that happen online. If you feel like for her safety, you need to check that Cash App, do it. It's going to make them upset, and that's okay. That is our job, is to keep our children protected, to keep them aware of what the possibilities are, and that we just want them to be safe.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm a parent too, and my two youngest, one's 20, one's 23. And I still have them conversations with them, and I still ask them, who you talking to online?
Yeah.
What you doing?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that sometimes we want to be friends with our children, but you got to be a parent first. You know, sometimes it's not easy, but you got to be a parent with your children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And my girls get mad at me every time I say, I open this app, I want to look at it. And I go, oh, Mom, why don't you trust us? But I'll tell you something very personal to me. So I always talk, this is the line of work I do. So I'm always in communication with my kids about online safety. And my younger daughter had Minecraft app on her phone. And I don't know if you guys have kids and if you've experienced this Minecraft craze, but she was like really into it. And all of a sudden one time she just kind of stopped talking about it. And then maybe a month later, she said, do you remember that I used to love Minecraft? And then I stopped talking about it. I said, yeah, what happened? You just got tired of it or what? It's not cool anymore. She said, no, I accepted a request, or I started chatting with somebody I didn't know, and I knew you would get mad. And then that person wanted to meet me at a mall.
Wow.
Which is terrifying. But she was smart enough, because we've talked so much about it, that she said, I got to go. And she deleted the app, and she hasn't gone back to it. Thank goodness. Not, and sometimes kids aren't as aware, and we're not that lucky sometimes. And that's the beginning of how kids get that's the beginning of exposure sometimes. And so I think, just like you said, we have to be parents first. And that's okay that they get mad. It really is. I have a question here that says, in the chat, it says, what do we do when a child is rebellious? If you could expand, like a rebellious, like they get upset that you're in their business, or just the child is wholly rebellious. I'm not sure what that of the context, but anybody have questions, another questions while we wait for that clarification?
Yeah, I have another question here.
Yes, I have a question. It's about, in your line of work, have you met children who are trafficked who have mental health issues?
No. So I work in the development department, and my job is to go out into the community, raise awareness, as well as raise funds. And I don't work directly with the children. So for me, no, but I'm sure that is one of the vulnerabilities. And I am sure that within our Connecticut Survivor Care Group, there most likely would be one.
Okay.
You have another question on the floor here.
I don't know if this was answered, but I'm a teacher and students tell me certain things. And if they tell me something that's questionable, what am I supposed to do? Like, I know like the guidance counselors, but like if it's that type, like if it's labor trafficking, which I think I have heard, what do I do with that information? Like, what am I supposed to do? Is like a police issue? Do I call, like, what's the process?
I would say, yeah, definitely let the higher people in your school know, principal, and they should be reaching out to the parents as well. The guidance counselor is absolutely important. And there's also the trafficking hotline. And I should have had a slide for it. I apologize, but the number is 1-888-3737-888. And you can find that on love146.org's website. That's a really good resource for you. And they have a national database. And so what they're able to do is they're able to call somebody who's local to be able to look into that claim.
So I would recommend like the child themselves call the number.
I would do it myself. I think maybe you should do it. Yeah, and definitely speak to the principal or the guidance counselor and let them know that there has been a disclosure and that parents should be pulled in. Parents or guardians, whoever that the safe adult in that child's life would be, to have them hear about that from a guidance counselor or principal.
Thank you. Yes, we do have all the pertinent numbers printed out. We're going to pass out the papers. We have another question, right?
Sure.
Good. Yeah, this is the, let me get you.
Yeah, I guess in the state of Connecticut, we have a mandatory reporting law. And as anyone in the helping profession, you don't have to have facts. You don't have to, have concrete evidence. If you have a suspicion that a child is being harmed, then you have to report. It's 1-800-842-2288. I used to work for DCF back in the early 80s, so I still remember the hotline number.
Thank you. And that is Mr. Cephas from our youth services, another person that works here with us. He'll be speaking a little bit. We have any more questions for Ms. Ramona? So I have a question for you from our standpoint as the church as a whole. What could we do to help with the situation? What can we do from our standpoint? Because I know you guys are doing the physical aspects and the emotional stuff and for the PTSD, but from a spiritual standpoint, what do you see our role in helping you guys with restoring these children who are broken?
Yeah.
Parents who are also broken.
Yeah. Well, like I said from the slide, I think this is the very first step, and it's a continuation. So it's a continuing work. It's just keep learning, really learn how to identify the red flags, really learn how to identify, how to maybe spot somebody who is potentially being trafficked. I think that's a huge, huge step in the community that you could do to help against anti-trafficking. You can also volunteer as a church. That's fantastic. We have some churches who have done that for us.
Okay.
we do not have volunteers working directly with children. It's just not, it's not the safest and it's not the best for them. And like I said, we always do everything with the child safety in mind. So volunteering, and that could have, you can be super creative in volunteering. And if you want to chat about that at another time, I welcome that conversation.
Yeah.
And then tread on trafficking would be fun for you guys to do. And again, you and I can chat about that at a different time, but that would also be a lot of fun to do. So that's the fundraising campaign, the wellness challenge, which is super fun to do. So I think things like that, and most importantly, learning yourselves and raising awareness in the community.
Well, thank you so much. We learned a lot. It was a lot of information. I didn't absorb all of it, but there's a lot thrown at us. But we thank you for your time. We thank you for coming here on your vacation, and
it's my pleasure
to spend time to educate us on this. So I want to give you a round of hand and thank you for your time.
Thank you guys so much. I so appreciate you again taking the time and having this panel. And thank you so much. And please feel free to give me an email or give me a call if anybody has questions afterwards. I know sometimes it takes a little bit of time to process and think about things.
Right. So I do have, people were asking, is there any way we can see that, have access to that PowerPoint that you had?
I can email it to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you can email it to me, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem.
Thank you so much.
All righty, guys. Bye.
And so our next presenter is from our own East Hartford local police department. Her name is Officer Lisa. She has experience. She worked with the Bureau with human trafficking and things of this nature. She has a lot of experience. She's now here in the local with us, and she's going to give us some information and some things we can do here locally that would help us. Lisa, the floor is yours. Oh, sorry. Is it on?
Hello?
Yep.
Okay. So thank you for having me. I apologize that part of what I'm going to read is off of my phone. I had a PowerPoint, but we're going to make it work. It's going to be off my phone. The information that I'm going to present tonight is coming directly from Department of Homeland Security's website, and it's so they have the Center for Countering Human Trafficking, and then they have the Blue Campaign. The Blue Campaign is similar, along with they both are under the human trafficking and sex trafficking. So we just heard a lot about like what they do after a child or a person has been trafficked. So we're going to kind of take it back and start at the floor and say, what is human trafficking? What is sex trafficking? So what DHS reports is every year millions of men, women, and children are trafficked worldwide, including the United States. It happens in any community, and victims are any age, race, gender, nationality. Like we learned, traffickers sometimes use violence, manipulation, or false promises of well-paying jobs, romantic relationships, really whatever they can to lure victims into, some type of trafficking situation. Again, the traffickers use force, fraud, coercion. Those are those three main points that she had brought up, and those are used to force into labor or commercial sexual exploitation. And again, they look for people who are susceptible for a variety of reasons, including psychological or emotional vulnerability. So that kind of answered the question if it's ever been worked with, like mental health, people with mental health. Yeah, that's a super high rate for likeliness of being a victim. Emotional vulnerability, economic hardships, lack of social safety net, natural disasters, and then political instability. So that's kind of the overview of what human trafficking is. Some indicators. So, how do we know? How do we know what, if we think somebody is human trafficked, or, what do we look for? How do we identify? And this kind of goes along with, as a group, in this church community, you guys are all so familiar with each other. Everybody knows everybody's name. And, you know, so when you start this, these are going to really be helpful to, you know, if something kind of starts coming up and you're like, you know what, that's not like them. You know, they used to always come and volunteer, or, you know, they were always here every Sunday, or, you know, whichever day your service is. So some of the indicators that we're trained to look for. Does a person appear to be disconnected from their family, friends, their community organizations, or houses of worship? If it's a child and you're in school for the teacher, has a child suddenly stopped attending school or is having a lot more absences at school? Have they had a sudden or dramatic change in their behavior? Somebody who's always, you know, super friendly, super outgoing is now kind of quiet, reserved, you know. Is a juvenile, so this one is a juvenile engaged in commercial sex acts. So what do we look for that? You're going to look for if they're kind of disoriented or confused, or they're showing signs of mental and physical abuse. So with that, do they have bruises in various stages of healing? So, you know, when we see bruises, the colors change and the size and shape and things. So that's a huge indicator, because that's showing a pattern. That's showing that this has been continuing, or it's been going on for a long time and it's continuing. I think some doctors, ER specialists can actually like date bruises, like color and things like that. So that's a huge one. Is a person fearful, timid, or submissive? Do they show signs of having been denied food, water, sleep, medical care? So just looking at someone, we can look around and, you know, name physical features on each other. And all of a sudden, you know, somebody, like their eyes are you know, getting sunken in, their face is thinning out. Their overall appearance, their even just like the texture of like skin, or their hair is thinning, or their hair is cut, or, you know, any really physical change that you can see. And these aren't like one and done. It's not like a coverall just because somebody cut their hair. It's not, you know, going to be a symptom, or they lost weight, you know, whatever the case, but kind of coupled all together, it paints a bigger picture. So this is another one. Is a person often in the company of someone who he or she defers to, or who someone is seeming to be in control of the situation? So where they go or who they're talking to. So if all of a sudden, you know, somebody's like, oh, well, you know, my friend so-and-so thinks that I should do this, or my friend so-and-so says that I should do that, or that sounds fun, but I have to ask so-and-so, kind of like a new person that becomes like the shining star in that person's world. They appear to be coached on what to say. That's a huge one. So if their answers, if you're like, hey, how was your day? Or, you know, hey, what's been going on? And they're just kind of like, you know, nothing, the same old, everything's fine. And it's just like that blanket where you're like, that's like the most generic answer I've ever heard. That's an indicator. If you stop by and the living conditions are, you know, unsuitable, where they're not really having like any sort of general care for them. Do they lack personal possessions and appear not to have a stable living condition? So sometimes you see where somebody's very, very attached to like one item, and it could be that's the only item that they have left. If they, you know, are being trafficked and whatever the situation was, they grabbed like a blanket, or they grabbed a keychain or something, and there's like a connection to like one item. That could be something, because it's really kind of their only connection to life prior. But then also somebody who has just nothing, and they're kind of scrapping around. Do they have freedom of movement? So can they come and go? If you're like, hey, you want to come for, you know, want to meet for a tea, or you want to, whatever it is, and they're like, oh, let me check. And consistently, like, they can't just be like, yeah, I can meet you. That's great. Like, that sounds wonderful. That's an indicator. Somebody's kind of like is it Geppetto and Pinocchio? The strings are being pulled. And then again, the unreasonable safety measures, where, you know, you stop by someone's house and there's like cameras, or you notice that their location, they always are sharing their location on their cell phone with somebody, something like that. So those are some of the indicators we're taught to look for. And then we'll go, so myths and misconceptions. A myth is human trafficking doesn't occur in the United States. It only happens in other countries. That's a myth. The fact is it occurs. Like she said, all you need is for human trafficking is a person, or sex trafficking. You know, it's a person. That's what's being bought and sold is the person. So it's everywhere. Cities, suburbs, rural towns. It's everywhere. Another thing, kind of, I think in the United States, we're in our little bubble where we're like, that doesn't happen here. We're the United States. So human trafficking victims only are foreign born, and those individuals are usually poor. So that's a myth. The fact that you can be any age, race, gender, nationality, and you can come from any socioeconomic group. When you're buying or selling something, there's a market for everything. Young, old, tall, short, if you can sell it, somebody will buy it. And then another myth is individuals must be forced or coerced into commercial sex acts to be victims of human trafficking. And like she said, we know that is not. The fact is, under United States federal law, any minor under the age of 18 who's induced to perform commercial sex acts is a victim. So anybody under 18 who's forced into or coerced or who's performing sex acts, not under their own will type of thing, they're going to be considered a victim. So any questions so far? I'm trying to move quick. No? Okay. Exploitation. So how do we protect ourselves? Because at the end of the day, we want to protect the community, but we also want to, protect ourselves and protect our own. Hold on, let me see. Okay. Sorry, my PowerPoint, it's a little messed up. Give me a second. Bear with me. Okay, so the exploitation and how to protect ourselves. So once we know what exploitation is, then we can kind of buckle down on how to protect ourselves. So exploitation is treating a person unfairly to benefit from their work. It can involve the use of threats, manipulation, force, get someone to do something they don't want to do for the benefit of somebody else. It can look like an employer forcing an employee to work for little or no pay. Connecticut had a case of that. I think it was in Windsor. They on a tobacco farm or some farm, and that was very recently, within the last 2 or 3 years, and they rescued a ton of children from that. It could look like so little or no pay. It could be a romantic partner threatening to harm their partner if they're not performing sex acts for money, drugs, or a place to stay. So kind of now that we kind of see what it is, what to look like and how it starts and how to protect us. So one of the things is false job promises. These are if you're answering a Craigslist ad or a newspaper, or somebody's like, oh my God, my friend has this job. It's so good. We're going to make so much money. So basically what we say is, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Be wary of other people in that job that are, if it's one of those jobs and it's hard to break into, you're going to go on Instagram and get, 10,000 followers in 2 days. It's going to be okay, well, what do I have to do to get that? So modeling, acting, or if it's something in a remote location or a faraway state or a foreign city. So those are all red flags. You're not going to, it's overnight, you're not going to move to Paris and, make it big. And again, it's because dangerous individuals lure victims into isolation away from their family and friends. So some of those could be the payment and job description don't seem to match. The employer doesn't request any information about your previous work experience. So we're putting out for a job and they're like, you are a great fit for us. And you're like, you don't even know my birthday. How do you know what I've done before? If the employer is asking for a photo of you as part of the application process, they're going to use that on their end to sell you. They're going to find the market for you. If the employer asks a lot of questions that are not relevant to the job. So it's not like, can you lift 50 pounds? It's, something that's very personal about yourself. And that could be not like, that could be like, oh, what's your relationship like with your family? Who do you go to? Because they're going to try and figure out, are you vulnerable? Are you somebody that I can get to join on my side? What can I use against you to get you to join on my side? If somebody's offering a fee to cover the cost of like uniforms or some other type of expense, red flag. You should never have to pay somebody to work for them. And another one is if the employer asks you to keep the job a secret or to lie about your age. That's a huge one. So yeah, go back to this. So working on, so for sex trafficking, one of the things is false promises of love. I think we see this huge on the internet, like online dating, things like that. Okay, so no, we're gonna skip it. We're gonna move on. Another way to keep yourself safe. Sorry, we're trying my best. So individuals looking to exploit others are going to use emotional, mental, financial support to gain your trust and build dependency. So that's a huge thing. A lot of times they create this environment where the victim is dependent on them. They feel like that, there really is no other way to go. They kind of have to comply because they don't have anything else. Like they don't have any of their possessions. Maybe they have their one blanket or keychain or favorite pair of shoes or whatever it is. That's the only thing they have that's theirs. Their identity is gone. So some signs of relationships that could potentially lead. Your partner demands that you tell them where you are at all times. They make you ask for permission to leave the home or socialize with others. They limit your communication with friends and family and loved ones. Again, that isolation. They threaten to hurt you or your loved ones if you don't do what they say. They hold on to your ID cards and other personal documentations or money. That comes in a lot with human trafficking. When somebody from another country is promised a job, they come into America, and as soon as they get off the plane and they're met with, whoever the family or whatever organization has coordinated with them, they take their passport, they take their ID, they take all of that, and then they give them a goal for $10,000. You have to earn $10,000, and then you can get this back. And I'm helping you and your family, and I'm doing all of your, all of you guys these favors. So you have to work to earn that back. I need to make sure that I'm reimbursed for what I put in to get you here, type of thing. It's a very dynamic. They make you feel unsafe to be around them. They provide you with financial support that requires you to ask them for money when you need it. So again, they kind of pigeonhole you and make it's a dependency. They have you work at a job where you don't get your own paycheck. The paycheck either goes to them or it's cash and it goes to them. And then they force you to perform sex acts for them or others for money or other items of value, like drugs or cars or a ride or really anything. And then some online safety tips. Individuals looking to exploit others can gain access to potential victims online because they're not always aware of how dangerous the environment looks or how it can be safe. So I'll kind of, a case that I had, and it has a pretty happy ending. I had a victim, and I ended up working with Homeland Security on this case because it did go international, and the suspect had victims in multiple states, but then also I think over it was London. It was from an app. So this is the story. I had a young girl. She was on an app, and she got followed by somebody. The app didn't really have like public private settings. It was more of like a overall general app. She got followed by somebody. That person started talking to her. That person knew her age and posed as somebody who was the same age as her. And in doing that, they started, these groomers, they started talking, what school do you go to? Who are your friends? And blah, blah, blah. So slowly but surely they gained all that information that a normal kid making a friend with another kid their age would say. I go to this school. I don't like this teacher. All those questions. And these groomers really are like, they're almost like mad geniuses because they can mold to be any age of the victim that they want. So it started off with, let's send like silly pictures back and forth. And it was like, send me a picture of your elbow, send me a picture of a high five, and send me a picture of a funny face, and all these different sorts. And the child did. And what ended up happening was, it got to the point where it was like, send me a picture of, being a private part. And the child didn't want to. But they came back and it was, if you don't, I know what school you go to. I know who your teachers are. I know, all the information they had gathered during that little friend making session got thrown back at her. And kind of the separate part is this girl, her parent, her mom, had warned her, don't talk to strangers. Don't give out information. And this little girl was blindsided. She didn't realize that the person wasn't the age they said they were and that they were going to kind of turn into this. So she, number one, didn't want to get in trouble. And groomers know that. They play the age. So they knew that this little girl has all these internet safety things. And, they used all that against her. And it ended up kind of going, where it shouldn't have gone. But the girl was very, very safe. And she went to her mother and she owned up to it. And the case came to us, and we were able to, through search warrants and internet things, identify who the target was, where he was, which was actually down south. We saw that he was using he was at a Dunkin' Donuts in a very small town down south, and we were able, we ended up, and eventually he was arrested and charged federally. But the point is, these traffickers, these predators, they act as the child, and then they blackmail them, and they blackmail them with the one thing, as parents, I'm a parent, I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I'm constantly telling my son, like, we don't tell anybody this, we don't tell anybody that. But then we also almost put like fear into them, which makes them not want to tell us what they're doing, because they don't want to lose the privilege of their iPad, because that's always the punishment. If you misuse what we tell you to do, we're going to take it away. They don't want that taken away. The groomers know that. So they are kind of put into a little box, and it's scary because these people know that, and then our kids don't want to tell us because they don't want to get in trouble, and then whatever they've done along the way just becomes a big thing. So watch out for that. I kind of went off on a little tangent, but I'm back now. But internet safety is huge because it's ruining everything. Let's see. So if you're looking for what you think, if you or someone you know is experiencing, a situation where you think you're being exploited, tell a trusted adult what's happening. One of the things we say, and I think that this is huge, is teach your children that safe adults don't ask children to keep secrets. That's huge. And just remember that safe adults don't ask children to keep secrets. Because it could, you never know who the trafficker is. It could be, groomers are everywhere. So if, you have a kid or a friend and they're like, well, they told me not to tell you. Why? Safe adults don't ask children to keep secrets. So tell a trusted adult. You can call 911 or your local law enforcement if you see someone in immediate danger. So I have this on a slide, which I can provide to everyone, and it just has a bunch of other helplines that you may think will be helpful. Sorry, I feel like my presentation is kind of all over the place, which is a good representation of me. But if you have any questions, anything?
Yes, anyone have any questions? Thank you so much, Officer Lisa.
Sorry, did that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
I had a question while I'm here. So being a resident of East Hartford, say I was to call you guys, I didn't have any evidence that my child was totally being groomed. What's the process? How do you guys handle that?
So your first step, you can, if it's not criminal, you can call DCF.
Okay.
But if you suspect it, you can, start making notes, and you can come in and even just ask to, talk to one of the detectives in the special investigations and say, I have questions and I don't know what to do, or ask to talk to an officer. We're all really trained in kind of the same thing. And you can say, I have a bad feeling.
Right.
Like, I know my kid, and my kid's done this, this, and this, and it just doesn't, it's not sitting right. It's my like parental instinct. What do I do? Where do I go from here? How do I open up how do I figure this out?
Right.
So yeah, you can call. We're always there for questions. I work evenings. So, you want to call for me, that's fine.
Okay.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
you can absolutely call.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any questions out there from anyone? Anyone have any questions? Anybody online have any questions? I can't, supposed to get a hand over there. I can't see. Anybody in the back room there? Okay. So I guess I had one other question. In East Hartford, do we have a lot of human trafficking cases in our community? I know you can't get specific, but
We have had cases in the past. Like I said, I'm not in the bureau anymore, so I'm not sure of any active cases, but we have had cases, and the threshold for what we consider human trafficking is a little bit different than what DCF considers or other agencies would consider, because we just have a different threshold that we go off of, because crime and then kind of like a moral side of it. But we have had cases in the past. So yeah, it's here. I'm born and raised in East Hartford. My parents still live in town. They live in the house I grew up with. And yeah, it really happens. It's kind of like cancer, which is a terrible thing to compare anything to, but they're both awful. And it doesn't discriminate. It's going to go after old, young, tall, short, it's all it needs is a body.
right.
And unfortunately, nothing we can do we're all bodies.
Thank you. Any other questions anywhere? All right. You have any questions online there, Brother Hamilton? Okay. We're going to have a quick break, not break, but we're going to have Sister Victoria is going to read a poem real quick, and then our next presenter will be, thank you, Officer Lisa, but we're going to have some, everybody give her a hand. And we're going to have Victoria do a poem, and then Brother Cephas from Youth Services and Sister Pam will present. And then after that, we'll be closing out. And then we'll have more freshmen downstairs. And if anyone has questions that they might want to ask in the forum, are you guys going to make yourselves available after this, or do you have to go? Okay, so you have to go. Okay, thank you. Well, let's give. Okay, yes, thank you. She's got to go back to patrol, so thank you for your time. Yes. And so, Victoria.
Hello.
Hi guys. I wrote this poem because when I was younger, my self-worth wasn't the highest. And I know that a lot of young women and young men struggle with self-worth. And as we just learned, self-worth can be a vulnerability. Low self-worth can be a vulnerability for sex trafficking or labor trafficking. So this is the poem. I wish, hold on. I wish I could write a letter to the younger me. I wish I could go back in time and hand it to me as a child. I wish I could give this letter to the younger me. In fact, if I could, this is probably what it would say. Dear younger me, I wish I could tell you how beautiful you really are. That your looks aren't just average, but a work of art. I wish I could tell you how creative you really are. That just because you're good at math doesn't mean you can't act or draw. Dear younger me, I wish I could tell you that you will never belong. And I know you're hoping that maybe I'm wrong, but trust me when I say you will never belong, at least in the way that you're trying to, because you are trying too hard to be liked by a crowd that doesn't want you. You are trying too hard to be liked by people who don't even like themselves. Victoria, you don't need their approval to be yourself. You don't need these boys telling you you're beautiful to believe it. You don't need strangers' attention to validate your being, because being you is enough. The way you walk is enough. The way you dress is enough. The way you talk is enough. And you are giving way too much of who you are to the way they perceive you, and you need to realize how incredible you are. You are a star. You shine bright with a radiance that you will eventually try and hide, but I can testify that your light will never die, because your light derives from a God who created the greatness in you, and his light shines within you even when you leave him. Yes, even when you walk away, he will watch over you, because it is never too late. Dear younger me, please know that it is never too late, because you are loved and precious and deserving and undeserving of self-hate. And above all things, please know that you are me. I am you. I see you and everything you've been through, and I love every bit and piece of you. Dear younger me, you are a princess, soon to be queen, that I can't wait for you to see. Sincerely, the older you, impatiently waiting for you to recognize your true value. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, thank you. And that's true. You know, a lot of our self-esteem is based on what we went through as younger people. I know that I know people, even myself still, I struggle with things that I went through when I was younger. And if we learn to get in touch with that and get the healing, we can move forward. Thank you for such a beautiful poem, Sister Victoria. So now we have my friend, Brother Cephas from Youth Services. He's Director of Youth Services for a while now. He's also worked with DCFS. So he has a lot of information, and he's going to share with us not only things that are we can do, but some of the things that he's seen just being director in East Hartford, some of the services that they offer and things that we need to do. So the floor is now yours. Thank you. No, I think it's off.
Now, yes. Good evening. Yeah, so I've been at East Hartford Youth Services. Next month will be 21 years. And East Hartford Youth Services has been around 50 years. And we do family counseling. We do a lot of groups, which we call positive youth development groups. We do a lot of work with the police department to divert kids from the juvenile justice system. We have something called a juvenile review board. A kid gets arrested for minor offenses. Instead of sending them to court, we will assess the situation and then make recommendations for services that are local. So we do a lot of different things at Youth Service, and I could probably go on about other things that we do, but hopefully it gives you sort of a brief Reader's Digest version of the kind of things that we do. And let me see, as I said, May of this year will be 21 years that I've been there. And May of this year will be my 40th year in social work. I know you're thinking I started when I was 5 years old, but 17 of the years before I got to youth services, I did do investigations for the Department of Children and Families. I then did 10 years at the Village for Family and Children. I was on their child sexual abuse treatment team. And then I was at Wheeler for 5 years coordinating the sexual abuse unit. So I have some experience with sexual abuse treatment, but as a youth service bureau, we do two things related to this. One is we provide mental health services, but the other piece is prevention. And prevention, I think, is so important. One of the things we do probably too much in this country is that we put the responsibility on children to protect themselves. No, adults have that responsibility. So we really need to be aware, and having a workshop like this where you hear some of the dynamics that goes on, you now have some information in your head that if you see something, you're going to think of it twice. Could this be this or that? So I'm going to talk a little bit about prevention, because prevention starts very early in life. But again, we go back to how do the people that exploit children, how do they get access to them? And we talked a lot about grooming process. I think when we think about child sexual abuse, we think of some sort of physical aggressive act that happens. It usually doesn't start off that way. It usually starts off with, in a word, manipulation of kids. So how do they get access to children? Well, they get to know the child. They don't really know the child, but they act as if they know the child. They gain that child's, his or her trust. And then they get a time and a place alone with the child. So they also will give that child attention. They'll show them affection, not true affection, but some sort of affection. They bestow gifts upon them. And their most powerful weapon is that these people have to reel in children is that ability to act nice. So at the start, that perpetrator may appear to be a kind-hearted, friendly, helpful, and understanding to the child. And I am sure there are some truly nice people out there in the world, but there are a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing, and we need to be aware of that, and children need to be aware of that. So hopefully in the next 4 minutes, I can help you kind of strengthen some of your parental instincts, help you overcome some of those internal resistance that we have to talking about some of these issues with our children, because we don't want to upset them, but they need to know. And it's really important that you know that you have the ability to save or prevent a child from being sexually exploited by being aware, by watching, by saying something when you see something isn't right. So one of the things that's so important is that parents need to prepare their children for the big world out there. We tell our kids, don't walk out in traffic. We tell them put a coat on. We tell them all these things to protect them, but we kind of stay away from those touchy subjects, whether it's child sexual abuse, trafficking, or even children's natural curiosity about the world. We stay away from those subjects. Well, parents, we are teachers of our child's safety, and especially sexual safety. And I know you say sexual and people go, well, I'll talk a little bit more about what I truly mean by that. Because some of the things you have to do as a parent or guardian or somebody who truly cares about kids is help teach them, family rules, family boundaries, and personal space. What personal space is, that area around your body. And some kids haven't learned it. Well, basically I tell them, stick your arm out. Okay, that's how far you should be standing when we talk. And once kids who have a really good sense of their personal space and boundary, they don't let people invade it. If you come in too close, they'll back up. Yeah. So if you have a really good, healthy sense of your space and your boundaries, you won't let anybody intrude on them. So also at a young age, besides the personal space, what are the social norms of the family? What type of behavior is accepted and what isn't? And children need to know that about social behavior, because they go to school, no matter how we want to keep them at home, they're going to be out in the world, and we have to prep them with the information, which I guess I call the armor, to go out there and know what to do and what not to do. One of the things is, especially young kids, that thing of that they don't have to be physically affectionate with everyone. Some kids don't want to give Uncle so-and-so a hug, and that's okay. They can teach them a handshake. And also the fist bumps are quite popular these days. But kids who don't want to, we shouldn't make them, because they're sort of saying, I have my personal space and I want to be able to keep that integrity. And then again, physical affection isn't always a hug. Sometimes it's a wave, a smile. Those are kind of things that kids have to sort of figure out. But we as parents, we help our kids learn these skills when they go out in the world. Always look for teachable moments, both the negative and the positive. So a child will understand what's appropriate and what's inappropriate behavior from other children, and importantly, other adults. And this education that we give them helps satisfy the curiosity of children and youth about what's forbidden and what's unknown, because we send them out in the world without any knowledge. That makes them vulnerable to people who will manipulate them, because they don't know enough about boundaries. They don't know enough about social norms. And then a child who's informed will be suspicious or resistant to receiving gifts or unwanted affection from strangers or from others. Whenever we used to, let me think, my youngest is 34 now, so it's been a while. But when somebody would say, "Oh, can I babysit your kids?" I would always go, "Why?" I mean, I'm here because I have to be, but why would you? So, not that there are some really nice people in the world who want to do that, but we just shouldn't just freely give our kids to anybody, right? We need to vet them. We need to know who they are, because protecting them is probably the most important thing we can do. So it's critical for us as parents to monitor and supervise our children's activities, know where they are. If they're at the park playing in a game, if you're a parent who's there, someone who might think about engaging child in some sort of sexual exploitation will see, oh, everywhere that child goes, the parent is there. There's someone who has eyes on this child. And we also have to take an active role in knowing our kids and their friends. Have them get out of the car, come into the house, say hello, who are you, get to know them. And again, as I said, be present at your kids' activities at school, in the parks, whatever, and be selective of who you leave your children with. It's very easy to want to have a break from your children, but you really need to trust that person with your child. And again, a child with good awareness about personal space and boundaries is informed about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, so that those who want to abuse or sexually exploit children will move on from that child because they don't perceive them as an easy target. They'd rather go to a child whose parents haven't given them the talk, who hasn't explained these things to them, because that would be so much easier than a child who's been given the information and knows what to do. One of the things that I always find interesting is when we talk about talking to your child about sexuality, parents go, parents usually say, I don't know how to talk to my child about sexuality. And again, they focus on the physical expression of sexuality. The focus should be on relationships. Right? Yeah. And again, sexuality and relationships based on our culture, ethnicity, our community, our religious views, all of which we then pass on to our children. Right? They're good values that we want our children to know, and we are the ones that will pass it to them, and we show it to them when we teach it to them. So this talking about sexuality and relationship really starts very early and continues almost through a lifetime. And people always say, well, how do we start the conversation? Well, I'm trying to think. Every Disney movie that's ever been made has some sort of love story connected to it. Aladdin and Jasmine and Beauty and the Beast. And use those stories to begin the conversation. Do you think Aladdin treated Jasmine well? What do you think he should have done? And again, you're talking about a character, not them. So it's easier for kids to talk about what they see, that third person. But again, you're reinforcing what you believe by using the characters that they know. And again, there's so many teachable moments in those movies, TV shows, or even in the real life. As you walk around, kids will see relationships that are good and bad. And then one of the questions that one of the things that we do a lot with kids is around bad things, we tell them, don't do it. Let me suggest you say, what would you do in this situation? And that allows them to sit back, think about the situation. For example, when I was younger, my father, what would you do if you got lost? And, there was a plan. This is what I would do. I would go this place, wait for, my parents to find me. But do we do that for kids when they're in uncomfortable situations? As an example, kids on a bus and a stranger puts their hand on their thigh. What would the kid do? And again, the kid would then have to think about that and hopefully come up with an answer. But what happens is that child then, if something were to happen, that child's prepared because you have given them thoughts, you've given them a plan. When there's an emergency, what to do. If someone's bothering you, what to do. But that begins with the constant conversation. And again, we think that it's for young kids, teenagers. If you ever talk with teenagers and what it's like in middle school and high school these days, and relationships between other peers, those are, kids need to have those conversations with their parents about how to handle bullying, sexual harassment, all of these things. And again, parents are the most important people in a kid's life, even if you think they're not listening, even if you think they're rebelling, they're listening. Yeah, and they want to know what you think. Right? So it's very important to know that. Again, you don't have to dump all the facts on your child. But what is most important is that the values that you have as a parent, you pass that on to your child. and continually reinforce that. That's a real fast Reader's Digest version, but I think you have the gist of, that we need to be more proactive with our children in preventing bad things from happening, or having them know what to do before something bad happens. And I guess the other thing is that we do have mental health services, and having been in the field for as long as I've been and working with children and families, and I don't want to forget the families, because I think frequently we think, yeah, the child is experiencing something, but that family is also, experiencing some pain that, if their child has been exploited or runs away or whatever, that we need to be able to help both child and the parents and the whole family. So, but with sex trafficking, what we know is that the consequences can be devastating for kids. Long-lasting physical and psychological trauma, mental health problems, depression, suicide ideations, and these long-lasting illnesses that can, really affect their ability to sort of navigate the world. Growing up is tough enough. I thought growing up was tough in the 60s and 70s, but 2022 is a tough time for kids with the pandemic. Social media, which we did not have when I was growing up. I didn't even have a personal computer. But instead of bullying and harassment that used to happen in the schools for 6.5 hours, can now go on 24 hours a day with social media. A few years ago, we had an ex-officer, a Glastonbury officer who now is writing books on safety in the internet. We had him come into East Hartford High School, and we had the whole freshman class there. And overnight, before he got there for the presentation, he had friended at least 50% of that class of freshmen the night before. They didn't know who he was. He was probably, 38 years old, male, and they thought he was a 14 or 15-year-old girl, and they all befriended him. And it made quite an impression that these kids didn't vet who's on their list. They don't really know who their quote unquote Facebook friends are. So it was a very powerful message that just don't accept anybody. And again, social media and the internet is a double-edged sword. It is great for some things, information, all sorts of things, but there's a lot of negative to that. And unfortunately, one of the, two of the negatives, one is that kids get to meet people that they shouldn't meet from all over the world who will try to manipulate them. And the other piece is exposure to sexual content that they shouldn't. So that's why it's important that we are aware of what our kids are watching on the computer, and that we monitor that, right? Because doing that without any parental supervision, without somebody that they can talk to, who knows what they'll think or do with the information. So again, I think the key though is parents need to really be involved. Yeah, and again, I guess one of the last thing I'll talk about is, with a lot of the mental health issues related to sex trafficking, we also focus on rebuilding the family, reconciling the support of family, because that's a key role. Because you have a child who has then been manipulated, who no longer feels like they can trust the world. They don't know who to trust. They've been manipulated by their quote unquote friend or boyfriend or girlfriend or whomever. Home is usually the place and the people that no matter what, they're your safety, they keep you grounded, and they will do anything for you. But after going through an experience that some of these kids have gone through, they need their family. to be there, to be that support for them. I could probably talk another 2 hours, but I won't do that. But hopefully I've given you at least enough little information to be able to have some thoughts about how you can help protect kids from sexual exploitation.
Yeah. A lot of information we're getting tonight. Before Sister Pam comes on, running in close on time, is there any questions for? Yeah, hold on.
Is it not true that at times the exploitation happens right in the house?
Yes. I mean,
So,
again, it's the manipulative nature of it, where the child could still be living at home and the exploitation is happening not outside of the house, but while the child's living under the parent's roof, it can be happening and the parents may not even be aware that it's happening. There were clues like the child would have special something, expensive gifts. How did you get that? Where'd that come from? That the parent didn't follow up on. So yes.
yeah, because there are times when it's not even the stranger, it's people that the child is associated, family members. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was talking about they get to know the child, and that person, I mean, I've been in the field long enough where I can, the age range of perpetrators can go is anywhere from like 14 to 70 something. Yeah, and it can anybody. I mean, it could even be parents who have done it for drugs, for all sorts of reasons. And I don't know, I think if you grew up in this area, the Berlin Turnpike back in the day had all these little motels and there were lots of rumors about trafficking and all that. And we didn't really believe it. But now that here we are, 30, 40 years later, and yes, believe it, it was happening right under our noses and we just kind of ignored it. We heard the rumors, but so it's an example that it's something that's been going on for so long. And if we can bring it out into the light, we can do something about it and prevent kids from being exploited.
Wow. Thank you. Is there any questions online? Any other questions? Well, thank you, Brother Cephas. I tell you, it's a lot of great information. And we do have some printout forms that have your number for youth services, the number for East Hartford Police, the national hotline for sexually exploited. We're going to pass them out the door before we leave. But before we do that, Sister Pam is going to speak real quick. And we have questions for her. She wants to speak on some stuff. And then we'll close out the program. Go ahead, Sister.
Hi, and I'm not going to speak about sex trafficking. I've learned a lot today. I'm a social worker for many years now, and it is always something that I think I need to learn more about. But what I'm talking about is that, and it's coming right after you, is that parents. And we at Charity here have a parents supporting each other group. And one of the things is that we don't offer mental health services there, we just connect with each other. And one of the things that is very powerful is that sometimes when you connect, you can get information. And for me, and I have two other facilitators, Sister Forrest and Sister Bev, is that we can tell you about resources. We don't know everything, but we can tell you where to go and where to look. And sometimes just to offer here to listen. If a parent come to me, I would say, I really don't know, but guess what? I know where you can go. And that is what is important, is about connecting. So one of the reasons why I am here is just to remind you that sometimes you can't figure it out, but you can talk to someone. So online, I'm not sure if we have visitors but I know our church members, is that we do meet every other Monday on Zoom and we connect with each other. We have presentation. And I'm thinking that maybe I'll invite you to one of our meetings This month is Autism Month, so we have like autism presentation. May is gonna be mental health. We have mental health presentation, and we have been going on for 7 years. So I'm just inviting you guys to join us, and we don't know everything, but at least we have a connection. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Pam. Does anybody have any questions for Sister Pam? I used to go to that group regularly. I haven't been in a while, but I'm gonna tell you, if you have a child and you have some that you need some support, a child with special needs, or just a child that's going through things, or you're going through things and just been a change in your household, it's a very good support group because you'll find out you're not by yourself. And one of the things that Brother Cephas and Sister Pam has spoke about, and really even Ramona and also Officer Lisa, is that it's a community thing. We should be a village. It's our responsibility to keep these children safe, you know. And God, these children are a gift from God. And we have a responsibility to keep these children safe. Yes, we have a lot of programs in the church, and we have children that are in our church, but our responsibility is for every child in our community, whether they're a member of your local church or not. And we should providing a safe place for them to go. And if they do some preventive measures so our children don't have to go through such horrors, amen. So I thank you all. And Brother Chief, are you gonna be available for a few minutes downstairs? So we're gonna get ready to close out because another program is starting. We have refreshments downstairs, but for those of you who like to stay up here, there'll be Vespers on the screen, but we're gonna be downstairs. Brother Cephas from the youth services will be downstairs. So any of you have questions that might not want to have asked them in open forum, because you know that some questions could be tough for people. We are passing out flyers for information, for numbers, and for those of you online who might need information, I don't know if we're gonna have it online, do we? For those of you online, if you want information on how to get this contact information, I'm going to give it to Brother Cecil of the Youth Federation, and he will be able to get it to your local churches, for all the churches that are on. If you're not part of a local church, my email is tbrown4749@gmail.com. Email me and I will send you a copy of all the information on numbers to call, because this is very important. I didn't even realize how many children are being exploited by labor. So that's another issue that we won't even, this is so much that we're not aware of because we're kind of busy doing things, but we have we need to make sure that we're keeping our children safe. So I'd like to close with prayer. Can I get all of you to stand as we pray out? Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for this time, for this day that we come together to learn how to keep one of your precious gifts safe, which is the children that you're giving to each and every one of us, Lord. It's not just the responsibility of the parents, but it's the responsibility of us as a village to keep your precious gifts safe. So we ask that we take this knowledge that we have, not just for a program or to learn, but to apply it to our lives, Lord, and to grow and to work together and find a common cause to help us defeat this evilness of trafficking. So we thank you, Father, for your love and your grace and your mercy. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Everyone can head downstairs, and thank you for everyone online for participating.